Hello, everyone. This is Paul Shrimp here from PrecisionAg.com, and this is Precision Perspectives. It's a new series of videos and video interviews that we're going to be doing with some leading technology companies and individuals who are kind of leading the charge in technology, both inside and outside of agriculture, and to get a sense for what they're working on, what some of the challenges and opportunities are in the marketplace when we're talking about precision agriculture. And today we have Jordan Winkler joining us from Descartes Labs. Jordan, welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be here.
Well, great. And Descartes Labs is a name that we hear quite a bit in agriculture, but we don't necessarily have a sense for, I think, all the things that you're working on. So can you give us from a broad perspective, what sorts of things you're working on, specifically in the data space across a wide number of industries?
Yeah, absolutely. So Descartes Labs spun out of Los Alamos National Labs in 2014. Our founding team has decades of experience in machine learning, remote sensing, supercomputing, and big data analytics. Originally, that team was working on mostly defense-oriented problems, some of which actually did include agricultural problems, things like monitoring illicit crops in order to understand financial flows moving in and out of certain groups worldwide. Rather quickly, though, that team recognized that there were a significant number of commercial applications for these growing technologies and spun the company out in 2014. We became pretty notorious in 2015 when we released our first U.S. corn yield estimate that was able to significantly beat the USDA estimates and actually moved the price of corn 3% that day. That sort of kicked off the beginning of our journey of really fusing together multiple geospatial data sources with cloud compute in order to build actionable insight across a multitude of industries. So I've mentioned agriculture. We're also working heavily in renewables, mining, construction, energy, and even insurance. And really the common theme across all these industries are any kind of operation that is exposed to the physical world, that has a large physical presence, where we see an increasing amount of sensor data becoming available. And the sensor data helps us better understand the physical world and apply methodologies and techniques that have previously been used mostly in the digital world. This allows us to gain unique insight and the opportunity to really find, monitor, and predict various phenomena on the surface and really understand the relationships between business operations, humans, and the environment.
Interesting. So what are the technologies that you're really using to gather this data? I think you use satellites and satellite imagery, but what are the other types of technologies that you use to get the data together?
Yeah, so we are most famously known for ingesting large amounts of satellite data. We also work with drone data. We work with ground sensor data. We'll also work with things like anonymized telemetry data, things like Wi-Fi pings, cell phone data. But then crucially, whenever we engage in an operation with a partner or a customer, we're also set up to ingest their data. And we do all this through a platform that runs on the Google Cloud infrastructure and is essentially based off of a custom file system that allows us to have really, really rapid access to this data. And so we combine this with intelligent compute scaling, and that allows us to perform large-scale artificial intelligence, machine learning applications in really, really short periods of time.
Well, who are the partners you're working with right now? What segments? I mean, specifically looking at agriculture, who are the partners that are really working with you to help put these data sets together?
Yeah, so we actually bring all these data sets together ourselves. We rely on a number of both public and private data sources. In particular, in the satellite realm, we rely on data from NASA, from the European Space Agency as well. Within the private sector realm, we work primarily with data that's directly sourced from our partners. And perhaps most famously, Cargill is one of our largest customers in the agriculture side, where we work very closely with them to understand a variety of inputs and outputs to the global commodity trading and shipping operations.
Okay. Well, In terms of agriculture, what do you see are the most interesting opportunities right now? There's we get lots of data comes in, lots of information is available to us. But what do you see based on the scope of what you do as the real opportunities to get on the ground, better decisions, better information?
Yeah, very good question. I think in a dream world, it would be taking all of the data that's now coming off of combines and creating a data ecosystem that brings that frequent, fine-grain, high-scale ground data on planting, on nutrients, and bringing all those data together in one place. So I think the challenge right now is that we do have a lot of players who are entering the space with more and more interesting technology around sensing and adapting to planning applications on the ground. What I would love to see is moving beyond the focus on just that single farmer's field and looking at all those fields at the same time. That requires the providers of the data to be open to collaborating and bringing all these data sources together with the existing data sources, the aerial, the satellite, in order to create much larger scale networks of understanding around the very specific dynamics on the ground. I also think that soil and weather data continue to be very, very interesting. There's a lot of work that's emerging right now on forecasting at finer and finer spatial resolutions for weather. And I think that's a huge opportunity. I think there's a number of companies who are launching ground sensors there that provide better inputs to those models. And then additionally, I think the awareness and the understanding of soil nutrient profiles and how those change over space is another critical aspect to understanding the proper application of nutrients during the life cycle of those crops.
Do you see this information being utilized more by the companies and the manufacturers or the farmers themselves or their agronomists? Because I think those broader perspectives sometimes have less utility on a farm than they do when you look at more of a broad kind of discussion that you have about larger trends, larger areas. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge in this marketplace of data analytics and decision support is who's making that decision and how do they make that decision right now. And really, in a precision agricultural sense, that comes down to having access to the farmer. And this is one of the bigger challenges for startups entering this space is that, larger companies have the attention of the farmers, whether it's through their combine, whether it's through the seed that they're using, whether it's through existing applications that they might rely on already to understand the dynamics of their field. This is why it's critical to have a larger cooperative ecosystem if your target is actually a farmer making a decision on the ground. And I think the challenge there is everybody who's moving into this space, especially the larger players, all want to carve that market share out for themselves. And in doing so, they may actually be missing opportunities that could be gained by partnering with other firms who may have complementary data sets that they can bring into the farmer. So I think at the end of the day, all of these data, all of the analysis, it's only going to be as valuable as what the end user can make out of it. Reaching that end user is not something that Descartes Labs thinks about directly right now, but we're very excited to assist the people who are doing those kind of end user farmer level targeting in bringing more useful information. Some of this stuff we are doing today with some of the companies who are doing this. We're just beginning to explore this, especially around issues in sustainability, things like identifying areas in farmers' operations that are perennially underperforming and incenting farmers to put that land aside for pollinator habitat, for example. And so these types of applications are really interesting to us. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a partnership model that's going to rely on someone who already has the attention of the farmers in order to progress in these areas.
Sure. Interesting. we talked a lot about, and you went up to Cargill and the grain side, but if you go beyond that, you look at the food companies and food processors and that part of the production system. What's their interest in the data side? Can you give me a sense for discussions that you're having with those folks as potential partners, or what's their interest, or what are you hearing?
Yeah, so one of the things that we actually are starting to hear more and more is around trying to decipher unique demand signals that allow these producers to make better decisions about their supply chain. This is one of the more challenging things to do for a number of different reasons. Fundamentally, understanding the demand for a given product, a given food product, relies on understanding about how humans are behaving. And so thinking about unique ways that we can identify human activity on the ground and utilize novel data sets and correlate them with existing knowledge is really the key thing for them right now. So examples of this would be, understanding how what traffic might look like at a given retail spot, a fast food restaurant, or a known point of interest where some kind of transaction that a food company cares about is happening, and then also having really robust data collected historically that we can compare and look to build forward-looking models. And so the challenge that we see with a lot of this is that many of these companies are not set up yet to ask these questions. And where we try to push people is recognizing that while they want a model and they want a result and they want something predictive, getting there requires an initial investment in infrastructure in order to manage and handle all of your data, to get it out of the data swamp that you probably have, to cut down on the silos and effectively create a system where you can start to not only collect the right data, but also then ask the right questions of that data. And so the challenge remains that fundamentally a lot of these things are a digital transformation question. They're about moving from single sources of data to all of the data all of the time, instantly accessible. And that's really where Descartes Labs comes in to make sure that the existing data holdings that they have can be brought together seamlessly with the data that we bring to the table.
Well, that's really interesting, Jordan. I just had one more question. Looking at the next 3 to 5 years and in kind of the medium term, can you give me a sense of how some of these technologies will kind of unfold and evolve? What will we actually see emerging in agriculture with some of these technologies, and in that medium term, 3 to 5 year time frame?
Yeah, I think that one of the most interesting opportunities in the medium term are going to be recognizing the value of these large global satellite data sets in extrapolating ground sensor data out and allowing for these new entrants to the market who are building ground sensors to actually better scale their operations without having to physically add as much hardware. I think the end result there is gaining a better understanding of environmental characteristics, which ultimately is going to push us towards better seed varieties, better yields, and a more productive food system for the greater good.
Well, it's great. It's been great having you, Jordan. I appreciate you joining us. That's Jordan Winkler from Descartes Labs.
Thanks, Paul.
Precision Perspectives will be a regular feature of an e-newsletter distributed by PrecisionAg.com and Precision Ag Global called The Signal. To register for The Signal, to receive it on a weekly basis, please check the comment section below and you'll find a link that will get you signed up for the e-newsletter. Well, thanks for joining us and thanks for listening, and look for another episode of Precision Perspectives very soon. Thank you.